This isn't your average podcast. But then again, David Soble isn't your typical business and finance attorney. For your consideration and appreciation, get ready to get serious. It's the Proven Resources Get Serious podcast with attorney and author David Soble.
Here at Proven Resource, my name is Dave Soble. I'm the managing attorney with Proven Resource. And the purpose of my call is actually the purpose of what is going on here. Somebody's got a band in the background. How about that? Can you hear it?
The only vehicle to let car drivers.
Oh, they're putting ads now on my radio show. Amazing.
And the legend continues, introducing the all-new BMW 320i starting at $32,550.
Anyway, so they just put an ad, a BMW ad on the show. So today we have Sheldon Zager with Metropolitan Properties. Shell, he is joining us on a three-part series dedicated to being a landlord, in the business of being a landlord. So today we have, and what we're going to do is we are breaking these three series into different areas. Today dealing mostly with marketing and securing a good tenant, qualifying a tenant. And Shell Zager has 30 years of being a single-family and multifamily landlord. And I really appreciate you joining us here today, Sheldon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you could cover all three sections of the series. But today, most importantly, I want to get into the business of marketing a home for a tenant, actually securing a home to market to a tenant, and then also finding a qualified tenant. First of all, the question that so many people have when it comes to looking for a home to rent out, is it that easy? I mean, right now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. They're flipping a home. They want to buy rental properties from the banks, and they want to rent them out. It's not that easy, is it?
No, it's not. You have to have some diligence, do some preparatory work, get the house ready to show, make sure the carpet's clean, and that the house is in good shape, and there's no violations.
Right. Well, let's go back for a minute. Like with your business, I know that you travel quite extensively for a number of different properties that you manage. One of the first things I would tell a prospective landlord is to make sure that if they're buying properties, that they kind of buy them in a certain area, a specific area, instead of having one property in, let's say, Westland and another property in East Point. Would that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. It also goes towards, perhaps, let's say, understanding the municipality, right?
A lot of cities want inspections on rental property.
Do they all have the same criteria?
No, they don't have the same criteria. Each one has a different criteria, different things they want done. They call them deficiencies. You have to have an inspection every so often to make sure the house is up. There's no dangerous violations on that house. Okay. Deficiencies.
Right. So, like, let's pretend for 1 minute. Let's say you were in Westland. If you had 5 homes in Westland, you would know to make sure that those properties all comply with the same repair or maintenance list that the city, wants you to comply with.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And you also get the opportunity, would you agree, with knowing the same, like, kind of the city officials or the municipal officials, as opposed to being spread out and having a little less clout?
That's correct. You get to know these inspectors, and they have certain things they like to have done in each house.
Okay.
For example is, you have GFI plugs in the kitchen and bathroom, and you have the smoke detectors working in the house. Okay. And there can't be any unsafe obstructions in the house. And when we're dealing with, the title of the series is called The Reluctant Landlord. Initially, it was people who would come to me. They were selling their home, couldn't sell it, but they already purchased a new home. So now they're reluctantly leasing the property. So they were ill-prepared to be, quote, a landlord as a profession. That's correct.
And then you have people who are newer landlords because they did want to get into the business of owning several homes and, hopefully making a side living, let's say, on 3 or 4 rental properties. And so the reluctant landlord really applies to them because there are certain things that they haven't taken into consideration before they got into the business.
That's right.
So when you're marketing a property, let's pretend again in Westland, what are you looking for, let's say, in the property before you solicit a tenant to come in?
I make sure the house is safe and is rentable and it won't lead to any problems. In other words, carpeting's got to be clean in the house. There can't be any damage throughout the house. Mm-hmm. Electrical and plumbing and heating's got to be up to snuff.
Okay. Do you do any, I don't want to get into Section 8 today, but Section 8 has its own code, right?
That's right.
They have their own requirements.
Their requirements, they have to be inspected every year to see if it's up to their criteria. The problem with a Section 8 tenant is that they want things done. They limit for each male and female. You have a separate room for each.
So there's a lot of requirements that don't even go. They go beyond just buying a home, beyond being conforming to city code, and beyond state requirements for code compliance. Then you have FHA, and not FHA, but then you have the Department of Housing. They're looking at the Section 8 differently. Actually, in each county, I think, has different requirements as well.
That's right.
That could be a whole other seminar. But getting back to looking for the right home to rent and being kind of in the same area if you're buying multiple homes, if you want to get into that business. Another area that is a big issue for so many people, even seasoned landlords, and that is qualifying a tenant. I know you're an expert in this because you come up with some really great ways for making sure that you have a prospective tenant who is going to make payments to you on time. How do you, tell me, how do you know, if somebody comes to the door, you're going to lease out to them, how do you know that they're the right tenant for you? Is it just money?
No, it's not money at all. Money is the last criteria.
Really?
What I usually do is have an application. Ask how long they've been there. I want a list of where they've been the last 3 years or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is I go to the last tenants. I go to the last house they've occupied. And ask what kind of tenant they were at. A lot of people, because of the economy here, weren't paying their bills on a timely manner.
Right.
I want to make sure that the bills are being paid on a timely manner.
So if their credit report, most people think, I got to show the landlord or prospective landlord my credit report. What if they've had a foreclosure? What if they've had a job loss or a decrease in income? What are you going to look at?
I'm going to look at the ability to repay.
Okay.
And how long they've been at these various places. In other words, I've had tenants in the houses that have been there with me for 20 and 25 years. Okay. Same tenant.
Wow.
Same tenant. The reason why is that I give a lot of value for it. I make sure that they are just qualified tenants. They're not going to
destroy the property. That's everybody's big issue, right? I mean,
make sure that they keep the place clean.
And you help them with that too, in the sense that you're always making sure that maintenance is
there
always available.
Some of my properties, they don't want to be bothered with cutting the grass.
Right.
I make sure I have someone there cutting the grass and shoveling the snow. Mm-hmm. It's in their lease. Mm-hmm. That I'm responsible for that particular problem.
So let's say you have somebody who comes to rent your unit, and they look on paper, they look pretty good. And even if the credit report isn't so wonderful, you've taken, it sounds like you're taking alternative documentation, such as what, like a utility bill history, credit, cable bill. People always pay their cable, right?
Right.
You're looking at those items, right?
How they pay their gas bill. If there's any, I want a list of I want a list of how they pay their utility bills. That's the biggest thing I do now, because I want to make sure that their water bills. If I have it in a lease that they have to pay their water, I want to make sure those water bills have been paid in a timely fashion. Actually, sometimes what you have to do is take the bull by the horns, go out to where the people lived previously, find out how they're living there.
Really?
You have to ask why they're moving from Westland to Wayne, Michigan. Why are we from Livonia to Wayne, Michigan?
So you're going one step further and qualifying. I mean, you have a lot of tenants, my understanding is that, so if you are not sure about the individual, let's say their story doesn't ring true, and we all have stories, and we've all heard stories, but if it's not right up front, you feel that if they're telling you something a little bit different than it should be, you go out to their former place of, or perhaps where they're living currently, where they're moving from, and you do what? You look at what? The house?
I look at the house, see what kind of condition it is.
Oh, how they've left the home.
The house. I even knock on the door and go in and see.
Really?
See how, if they keep the house clean and orderly.
That's pretty bold.
It is kind of bold.
So you must be in like $5,000 a month on that piece, right?
No, I'm not anywhere near yet.
But you ask them, do you say to them, I'm going to come out and look at your home?
I do say
really?
That.
Interesting.
I come out. I don't tell them when I'm coming.
Right.
It's just when I'm going to
kind of catch them off
guard. That's right.
Well, I know, it's unfortunate that a lot of people feel that they have to hide something from the landlord, such as a credit going to story about some guy in a trailer. What was that about? Like you were going to let this guy move in, but you were sitting at a restaurant, at a Dunkin' Donuts. What was that?
What I do is I put applications in the house. The house is open.
Okay.
And I let them fill an application. I had a guy that drove up with a trailer full of furniture. And I was across the street at Dunkin' Donuts. And he called me right away, and he wanted to move in that day. He wanted to pay me years payments in advance. I didn't want the tenant.
Right.
Because I don't know why he was leaving that house.
And he was so quick to move in and give you
years payments in advance. I do select the tenants by. I collect 1.5 times the rent.
Right, which is the law.
Right. And I ask for that money. And I also do a check-in and check-out sheet, which
so important.
Which is very important. And I also make certain that they have in the lease. I make sure that they have 2 adults and how many children and 1 pet.
Well, it's interesting you say that. That is, in the third part of our series, we get more into the legal aspects of being a landlord and your rights, and also tenants' rights. But one of the issues that I tell people all the time, whether it be a lease or a purchase agreement or any other loan document, whatever it is, read your document before you sign it. And that means the same, and it goes the same for giving somebody a lease to sign. You should know what's in your lease. And we'll get to that in the series, third part of the series, but the interesting thing you just said is you list specifically who is going to be the occupant of that property.
That's correct.
Not just, Joe and his wife. You say Joe and Susie, and if they have 2 kids, you name the kids. And you have a dog, you state that there's a dog, perhaps with a name, right? Does that make sense?
That's correct.
That's a big issue for a lot of people, is that landlords get so, especially newer ones, get very excited about going in to a home and leasing it as quickly as possible. So what they'll do, you also said, the check-in lease, checklist for the condition of the property. A lot of them will say, hey, just fill it in, and then I'll get it from you later. Because they're so excited to get a rent check, and they leave, You have to take a little bit more time up front to get everything done right so you don't have the problems at the end. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
One of the questions, one of the things that people bring up a lot is understanding the money issues that a tenant may have, and to kind of foresee or to kind of project in the future what you may be looking at with a prospective tenant before letting them in? Do you take into consideration where that person's working when making a decision of whether or not they should be your tenant?
Not really.
Okay.
I take special care to see how they're maintaining their existing building.
Well, that's really important.
I'll give you an example of one.
Okay.
I had a lady that she was afraid of heights, and her light bulb in the kitchen went out.
Okay.
And I have in my lease that they got to pay that first $50 of an inspection,
right,
and a replacement. I call it a tradesman.
Right.
But she was afraid to go up on a ladder,
right,
and take the light bulb out,
right,
and it cost me $50 to have that electrician go in there and put it on,
right,
and do that work on it. I asked the tenant to reimburse me for that. Hopefully they won't call me the second time.
Right.
Something like that. I take a lot of care in how they maintain their lawns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, some tenants don't cut the grass, or don't cut the flowers, and let the weeds grow.
Right.
I rent some of my houses for below market rent. So I keep a good tenant for a long period of time.
All right.
Which works out for me really well. I have some tenants been in my house 25 years.
Yeah, that's why I asked you. Actually, I remember you telling me that when we first met, and I said, what is your secret? And really, it wasn't your secret. It's just that you had a lazy tenant who didn't want to go out and get another property. No, you were too good to her. Right?
Very good.
Right. Well, what do you, what I do with tenants is I kind of take into consideration what the type of work it is that they do. So if I know that, they're let's say an airline mechanic, I have a lot of property that I've dealt with down in Romulus or Ypsilanti or, downriver. By the airport, I'll have clients or tenants that I know that they're airplane mechanics. Those are, pretty secure jobs. But if I have somebody who shows that they're working at a cafeteria and their hourly rate is minimum wage, I know that they may have a problem making the payment for whatever it is that I'm asking. However, if that person is working at a cafeteria in a university where there's always going to be work for that individual, so long as they, comply with whatever their employment relations are, that's somebody who I can feel comfortable with in keeping him as a tenant.
That's right.
So you really have to use, that's common sense items. There's no real, trick to it. It's just using common sense.
I also rent to families.
Okay.
I prefer families.
Okay. With
children rather than single young people.
Okay.
Because
it's like reverse discrimination. You're looking for families. Right. Right. That's good.
Young people today are moving together. They don't stay together. They have an argument, and one moves out, and the other one moves out.
Got it.
Okay.
That's a common sense life lesson.
That's a life lesson to learn.
Okay.
And because of the way things are today, you got to make certain that you get that rent check every month.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't want to pay the rent. They want to pay that rent check.
Okay.
I have it in my lease that they get $10 off first month lease because the money comes in by the 5th of every month.
So you incentivize them. You give them incentives to make the payment. That's a whole other issue, but we can definitely discuss it now. And keeping a good tenant means that you're getting good, cash flow, and to preserve it, you want to make sure that your tenant is making the payment on a timely basis. So you basically, and I know quite a few landlords who do this, they will say the rent is, let's pretend it's just $1,000 a month. However, if you pay it before the 5th, you get a break of anywhere from, $50 to $100. Now it's $900 a month. And that goes a long way for a lot of people.
That's right.
And the same token, you have people who will pay on time, but then they're calling you constantly for repairs or maintenance issues that were not really created. They're not mechanical issues that you caused, but were caused by the tenant. And you alluded to it earlier. You have them pay the first, let's say, $50 to $100 of any repair that is needed. And so what does that do? That gives them another incentive, right?
That's right.
To, although it can work against you, right? Then they don't call you for the drain backup or any of these things. They let the whole, interior go to pot until they make sure that the expense is over, let's say, the threshold amount of, let's say, $100.
Right. I also do surprise visits by the tenants in the property. Like I had one last week where the tenant locked their keys to the building, to the house, in their house.
Okay.
They called me and he wanted to get into the house.
Okay.
But I was out of town that day, so I couldn't facilitate it. I told them to go get a locksmith.
Right.
And unlock the door. And they had to pay that.
Sure. A lot of times what happens is, and there's an old saying, if you give an inch, they take a yard. What I've learned from some very, veteran landlords like yourself is you can't even give an inch. If you're owed a certain amount of money for a certain fee that they've incurred, such as, let's say, the locksmith, you don't say, well, pay me in 45 days. You go and get that money right away.
That's right.
Because if you don't, you're not going to see it, or they're going to deduct it from their next rent or something of that nature. So you have to be pretty vigilant with each tenant. You don't have to be the enforcer. You just have to be vigilant and enforce the terms of the lease to the letter of the lease.
That's correct.
Right. Like I said, a lot of new landlords and landlords-to-be don't even know what the lease is that they're going to use. How do you get the best lease? I know what I write up for people. I think it's pretty good. I've had a lot of good clients who told me I've taken let's see here. Yeah, I've taken a hybrid of a number of different leases and put it in different terms for different people. So how did you get your lease?
I got mine through a lot of trial and error.
Okay.
There's a simple one-page lease that I use for certain tenants. And I use what is called a Detroit Real Estate Board lease.
Okay.
Which gives me every clause I want.
Right.
In the lease.
Okay.
And I make sure they read it, understand it. Whose responsibility is the insurance.
Right.
I maintain usually the electrical, plumbing, and heating.
Right.
And I have no problem with that. But they have to maintain. They can't paint without my permission.
Right.
And they must keep the house in good repair.
Right. What about, you told me I think one of the things that you do is you do give them the ability to make a deposit into their own account for renting, like for your rental payments. Okay. That's really an interesting slant on collecting rent.
So I don't have to chase them. I find out where they bank, and I tell them to make the checks payable to me and deposit in the bank with my number. It's a one-way bank account.
Right.
They can only deposit. They can't withdraw.
Right. So that's a wonderful way to do things, especially if you have. It's kind of like a lockbox almost. It works like that. You basically are giving people a way to make their payment without having to mail it, because a lot of people want to just walk into the bank and they can put the check right into your account.
That's right.
And that's a lot better than the check is in the mail.
That's right.
And that's probably trial and error too, right?
That was a long time ago.
Right, a long time ago.
That lasted a long time.
The collection. The other thing about qualifying a tenant and also enforcing lease terms is having a collection practice. That you always stick to your collection procedures for the lease. That you don't make exceptions, let's say, for one tenant as opposed to another one, because then you forget some.
Pay it off.
So you see that they're making sure the water bills being paid
timely.
Right.
Because usually water bill is usually 60, 90 days behind.
I
want to make sure that the water bills are up to date.
Right, because that's where they stick a lot of landlords. By the way, and you can do it the other way. You can go for each house that you have, you put in a deposit. See, this is interesting. The water bill goes with the property.
That's right.
It's a lien on the property if it's not paid. I've heard landlords say, well, geez, I put a little bit of money in the escrow account over at the city, and they will put the tenant's name on it. Well, that's great. But if the tenant doesn't pay, the tenant doesn't pay. The delinquency on the water bill still runs with the home. So it's better to do what you're doing, which is monitoring the monthly payment, or quarterly water bill payment by just having, I usually collect a copy of a paid receipt is what I ask the tenant to provide me.
I sometimes, when I have in certain cities that have high water bills, I make certain that I collect enough money as an additional escrow for the water bill to make sure it's paid in a timely manner.
Well, I think that we've learned a lot today from you, Sheldon. I can't believe the half hour that we are usually allotted. I know it's already going. Well, half of it was taken up by the BMW commercial that I was not aware was going to be on. But so I kind of want to wrap this up real briefly. You would agree with me that if you're going to be a landlord, or if you're currently buying properties as a landlord, that you concentrate in one area. That way, with the homes, let's say in a certain location, you'll get to know your municipal or city officials and the inspectors, which is really important. And they also get to know you. That's right. And that's really important because no matter where you're living these days, your home has to be registered as a rental property. From this whole foreclosure fallout, most cities have required some type of permitting, inspection, etc. So definitely try and locate your home within a certain geography. Secondly, when it comes to qualifying tenants, because of, the economic fallout of the past several years, you're much more amenable when you're qualifying a tenant to verify their credit history or payment history using alternative documentation, utility bills. You're nodding yes, but nobody can hear you.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. The last paycheck. I actually go a little bit further and try and figure out, do I have a stable employer in the community that this tenant's working at? However, I don't think that really works anymore because nobody knows who's.
I know a lot of tenants now bring you because they've been heard and rejected from other properties. They bring you a copy of their credit report.
Okay, that's good. And then you also go and inspect current residences of prospective tenants, which is a great idea. And that would, if somebody wants an aha moment to go, oh, that's a great tip, that would be one of them. Go inspect and take a look, drive by the property where they live at. You'll get an idea of how your tenant lives. You knock on the door.
You go into the house.
Which is really important. And then number 4, just, things that I gleaned from this conversation, set up an account, make it convenient for your tenant to make a payment to you. I bet you could even use PayPal these days. But I know that's too advanced for you. But I think that might be a way to do things. I'd have to check with PayPal. But have your client pay off the computer or have them walk into a bank with an account that you set up specifically to collect the rent. And lastly, what it really seems to be the best thing that I learned today is that I would like to have Sheldon Sager as my landlord because he does all the mowing of the lawn on most properties. You're good to your tenants is what you're telling me. You're very reasonable and you want to help them succeed as being your tenant. And you make sure that they're happy in the property that they're renting. So I'm going to ask that you be my landlord on a property soon. I'd like to have you as my landlord. But Sheldon, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Okay, and this is the first of a 3-part series on being a successful landlord. You can also go online to provenresource.com and get some information as well as our blog. We do have a Facebook /Proven Resource where you can leave your comments. But I really appreciate that you joined us this afternoon. And Proven Resource, our whole job here is to make sure that people who are facing any type of financial or legal difficulty in general, we're here to help them and give them the information as professional problem solvers. But also we deal with real estate issues, and this month we're concentrating on landlord issues and what we're trying to help them succeed as well. And thanks for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Nice job. It was a little rough at the beginning. You know why? I didn't know about that BMW thing.
I know.
it threw me off.
Maybe they didn't blank it out.
No, I see how, they're trying to get ads, and this is how they make money. I think you did a good job. The first couple minutes were hard, though, because I'm like, okay, what just happened here? Very cool. Thank you. See, that went a half hour, Sheldon. See how quick a half hour goes?
Getting warmed up.
You liked that, though. You liked it. You want to come back next week?
Show next time?
Yeah, you can come back next week. In fact, I'll tell you what. Next week I'll have you and somebody else join us.
Okay.
I'll have that guy Paul come. He's really good at it, too. Young perspective, but different. That one thing is so interesting that you do. I wish I did that with people, but now it doesn't matter. I don't have tenants. My last one, get this. The one in Ypsilanti I evicted for pets, she went to go to legal aid. 3 times we had to go to court. 3 times, because Eden. So the third time I said, this is going crazy. This is nuts. It should not be so difficult. So I go in. Turns out the attorney, do you ever remember me telling you the story about Percy Foster in Ann Arbor, why I don't lend in Ann Arbor or Washington County? It took 2 years to get him out because legal aid. Well, guess who the attorney was?
No way.
Same guy. So I see him, he sees me as, I'm always nice to people, so he says, oh, I remember, hi, David. I said, hi, Paul, how have you been? He goes, she's your tenant? I said, well, she was my tenant. He goes, no, she's still your tenant. I said, Paul, I don't want her as my tenant. I go, she didn't pay. More importantly, she didn't. So Ian gets all in his face. She says, I want a hearing, and I want this. Okay. I take Eden. She goes, no, by right of law. She's all. I said, Eden, pull her over. I said, Eden, this guy kept me in court for 2 years on no merits. He has this trick. He never has anything ready. So when he has item A or document A finally and they go to court, it's document B that he needs still to get to the judge. So now the judge gives him an adjournment for document B. Then they go to document C all the way down the alphabet. He did it with me. So you know what? He wants 5 extra days. That brings her to the end of the month. Give it to her and get her out. She hasn't paid me in 4 months. What am I? She has no money. Fuck it. Just get rid of her.
I was trying to get money for the retainer.
It's legal aid.
Legal aid?
Yeah. The minute I saw him, I went, oh, no. I was like, oh, no. I'm not going through this one. This lady's not worth it. The problem is she's this big. She got to tell him how well I treated her for 5 years, you know. The only reason I wanted her out is because she brought the dogs, but then she just stopped paying.
Section 8 tenants, usually they're a little bit off. Okay,
this was a Section 8.
They're a little bit off. Section 8, they have to go to school or work. No.
Oh, good. That's really good.
They have a meaningless job working in McDonald's.
Well, whatever. That's good.
Or at Walmart, something like that.
No, that's good. You know, my internet just went down. I have no idea like that. Echo and everything. It was really weird.
Just the beginning.
The whole thing at the beginning was weird. But thank you. You did a nice job. And it was good. See, by the way, half the thing is not about, half of it has nothing to do. Oh, no wonder this isn't working.